Hello there, everyone. Welcome to the Real Life Process podcast. I am super excited today to bring on one of my mentors, one of my friends, to talk about something new that he has out in the world. So, Dan, welcome to the Real Life Process podcast.
Oh, thank you so much, Teresa. I appreciate you having me as a guest. Looking forward to our conversation.
Yeah, it is so fun to have you back. We've had you on one other time way back in the day when we were talking about the tool of the Enneagram, and we'll reference that podcast in the show notes just in case you want to go way back in the archives and hear that episode. But today, I wanted to bring Dan on because I was privileged, as I am a part of Dan's mastermind, to be one of the first people to get a copy of a brand new book. For those of you watching on video, I'm going to hold it up here, called An Understanding Heart. And this is such a beautiful piece of content that I want to dive into today on the behind the scenes. I got a pre-copy back at an event that we had, and it just came out, and we'll talk about how you can get your copy. But I just want to dive into some conversation, if that's okay, Dan, around the behind the scenes and the what's in the book and all the content.
Well, you know, it has a lot of my heart and passion in there, so I'm game for
Here
sure.
we go. So here we go. Let's talk first, Dan, about where did this content actually come from? I kind of know the backstory, but I'd love for you to share with our listeners where all these little writings, there's 95, if I'm correct, different little, just short writings. How did this even start to come together as this kind of book?
Well, I hope this encourages writers out there because I didn't sit down to write a book for this content at all. As you know, being part of my mastermind, there's about 25 of us who share life together deeply. And so I started writing. I just felt inspired to start writing on Sunday mornings, what I called Sabbath musings. So just a short thought, something that had happened, something I observed that kind of shared a principle that we can all learn from. And they were only, they were short, 700 words or so. And I would send that out just to you all, the members of my mastermind, with no intention of doing anything more than that. I did that for 4 years, every Sunday morning. Never felt pressured to write. I always had things I wanted to share. And then the response from the mastermind was, wow, these are great. The response from my wife, Joanne, is this is the best writing you've ever done. And from that composite, everybody's saying, you need to get this out to the broader audience. So I finally considered that. Now, if I was doing one every morning, every Sunday for 4 years, I actually have about 200 of those.
Mm-hmm.
But I went through and selected 95 that are in this new book called An Understanding Heart.
So, as a part of the mastermind, I think I've been in almost 3 years, maybe 4. I'm not really sure. Since 2017, 18, something like that. I've gotten these every Sunday morning. So they're special to me too, because, and you may not know this, I actually, the whole time you were sending them, I have a folder in my email box that I have put all of these in because I
Really?
just felt like they were special. And my pastor, if he listens, will not love this, but I usually receive them about 10 o'clock when I was in church most mornings. And,
Oh,
I'd be
no.
like, there it is from Dan. And my husband, Dale, would be sitting beside me and goes, what are you doing? I'm like, I'm reading Sabbath musings. Like it became a part of, and I wonder about that for you, if you'd say a little more, because I know for me, I looked forward to them because for one thing, I knew they were written just to a small circle. And you had shared that, been very honest. I knew they were very heartfelt. Maybe it's something that you weren't ready quite yet as a writer to share with the world. They were just your thoughts. But I wonder if you talk about the practice of that on a Sabbath day, on a day that you're just relaxing, and what that felt like for you, just even as a practice.
Well, I love thinking deeply. I'm never content with the status quo. And when I think about more or think about goals or starting a new year, it's not just about bigger and more, it's about better. So I'm looking for how can I be better, more valuable as a person? And one of the ways I do that is to address my, insatiable thirst for growth, but to challenge things that I've believed. Why do I believe that? Was it just because of the culture I grew up in, habits that I've established, my family influence? Now, I don't want to throw the baby out with the bath, but there are a lot of things in there that I realized were more cultural than even scriptural, as an example.
Mm-hmm.
Things that I learned in church that were part of our culture, but maybe really needed to be re-examined. So I love that process. So I read people like Thomas Merton and people who thought deeply, Carl Jung and other writers like that, philosopher Dietrich Bonhoeffer,
Mm.
and draw from their wisdom and then apply it to current situation, current culture, and just I question things. Now, it's not a book about just that. I want to draw principles together, but it's just my thinking in ways that how can I be a better person?
And I love that as a writer, now that I have actually written a book and you realize the power of writing something down and then how you let this kind of savor and you didn't feel this need of like, I've got to put it out there in the world right
Not
now.
at all.
It was written really for you from your heart. So let's talk about that because that's the title of the book, An Understanding Heart. Why did that title feel like the one that you needed to put on the front of this beautiful, by the way, beautiful book? It's it's in a box. It's done so well, but that title really speaks to what's in this book. So where did that come from?
That was birthed many years ago. As writers often do, there's a seed of a thought, or songwriters or artists have a little theme that just kind of is nurtured for years and then is birthed at some point. But when my middle son Jared was 17 years old, he's now 43, incidentally. He was 17 years old. He was challenged through the homeschooling program he was in to study some biblical character. So he thought very carefully about it, and he finally selected Solomon. And I was excited. I was going to help him with this. And of course, being the son of a pastor, I mean, I know what we know about Solomon. He's the wisest man who ever lived. Every little kid who went to Sunday school knows that. When we started researching Solomon and his request, we couldn't find anywhere in any translation that he had asked for wisdom. I thought, well, this is strange. Rather, he said, God, I'm not the man my father was. I feel a little overwhelmed. I got all these people to take care of. Please give me an understanding heart so I can lead them well. And that really impacted me deeply. I thought, if
Mm,
that's the basis of wisdom, that's something that I can strive for, an understanding heart. It became embedded in my personal mission statement, and I've carried that with me all these years. Then when I had all these segments written, I was in a brainstorming session with a couple of dear friends of mine. We had no agenda other than just to kind of bounce the ideas off each other for the day. And they said, well, what do you want this book to convey? Because I was struggling then with the title, because it's a compilation of 95 different segments. So
hmm
there's not like one theme that I'm trying to convey in there. They said, what do you want to convey? And I said, well, I really love the idea of it just helping people be more wise, having wisdom. They said, well, what does that mean to you? And I explained just what I explained to you. And they said, wow, there's your title. It hit me so hard. I started weeping and
mm.
understanding heart. It was such a natural fit for what I wanted the book to convey. I mean, I get goosebumps even now just describing it. And understanding heart. That's exactly what I wanted it to convey. And then I had an artist who designed the logo that you see on the front. And again, it's on a simulated leather. It's just burned on. There's no color, but it's got an eagle. Well, I love the symbolism of an eagle. We use that a lot in our 48 Days company, inside of a heart. Oh my goodness, that
Beautiful.
is exactly an understanding heart with the sage wisdom, focus, vision, and all of an eagle, but inside a heart to control that and shape it. So that's probably more than you wanted, but
No,
I
that's
really,
exactly what I wanted. I love to hear the inside story of your heart. For you to say that still gives me goosebumps
yeah.
to share that story. And so I just want, if you flip over, I know most of you are listening audio, but this is one where you may want to go over to the YouTube channel and really see the book because as you see, each page has this design too of the eagle throughout the book, and the quotes are done. And There's a little ribbon in it. I remember as a mastermind, as we walk this journey with you, as we do in the group that we have, and you bringing the book, I think not this last time in October, but to the one before, because you had a copy of it. And I took a picture of you like reading from the book and did a little video. And just to see the joy on your face of it coming together and all the work that went behind it. Because it's been a work in progress to do this kind of book, which is different than some of the books that, you know, we see out on the market now. This is really kind of a life work piece that's come together. So beautifully done.
And well, thank you. And from a business standpoint, I did all the things that publishers tell you not to do. You can't do that. Yes. One thing you didn't mention, there's a little eagle at the very top left corner on the first page. And as you go through the book, that little eagle flies across the top of the page. I knew it was somewhere,
but I didn't know where it was. I remember you. Yes. So y'all can see barely here this little line. So you have to get the book so you can see it happen in real time. When you flip through the book, it actually moves.
So there's color all the way through, a satin bookmark, that little eagle flying across the page, the simulated leather cover, a custom box that has then quotations around the edge of the box, and then a medallion in there as well that on one side has the logo for an understanding heart. On the other side, it says, walk with the wise and become wise, which really is our kind of mantra for our mastermind. Walk with the wise and become wise. That's a central theme to what's in the book as well.
Yeah. And you see that again, right behind Dan. We all have those plaques. That's one of the things that he's given to us all. I have mine at home as well. And it's just that reminder. And we're going to talk about that. I want to get to, actually, that's a great segue as I'd like to walk through just about 3 of these little readings on our recording today. And the first one I'd like to talk about is actually on page 9. And the theme of this one is kind of this: if you want more money, learn to be more generous. And this idea of what comes first, right? Generosity or wealth. And at the end of every one of these too, you ask, I think at every one of them, if I'm correct, you ask a question at the end too. Just a little reflection for your own self. So if you're that kind of person, you may want to buy a blank journal to just keep with your book, right? To read through. But Andy Stanley has a quote that you start with here that says, do for one what you wish you could do for everyone. And I wonder for you, Dan, for you and Joanne, who I've gotten to know so well, just how you live your lives and what you do. How have you lived that out in your own life of that do for one what you wish you could do for everyone? How does that play out for you?
I grew up as the son of a pastor again, so we would have missionaries show up, and there were always a lot of causes that were worthy causes where we were encouraged to contribute to that. And as I see now, oftentimes we're pretty disconnected from the actual recipient. We just write a check, drop it in the offering box, and hope somebody does something worthwhile with that. Joanne and I have always been more drawn to helping individuals. Joanne in Tennessee did a lot of work with women coming out of the Tennessee prison for women. And so we'd have women that came out with nothing but their scrubs from prison. Nobody would hire them. Nobody would rent to them. Nobody would give them a job. I thought, you got to be kidding me. So we would do things to help those women. Now, that's not something that's scalable. That's not something you can do for 1,000 people at a time. But we would take one at a time and typically give them a car to get started as a basic step up to then get a job. Often took them for interviews with things that I had set up, help them get places to live, sign for the apartments if we needed to. But that's something that made a dramatic difference in the lives of a few ladies who years after that now, thank us, call us mom and dad, and their lives have been transformed and given a new direction because of just a little help like that. Again, we like to do those kind of things. And I hope it doesn't sound like we want the immediate, adulation from that, as opposed to doing something anonymously where you just write a check. But we just feel like it has perhaps a more profound impact and ripple effect in doing those things. So we do a lot of things that we can't do it for everybody, but this person, absolutely. There's a lady right now who we're very supportive of, a young mother who has a cleaning business. She just had a baby. The baby is in NICU, having a little difficulty breathing and might be there for a week or so, which prevents her from working. She's not somebody to ask for help, but we know that her income is not happening while she's there with her baby in the hospital. Yes, we're going to help her out, and happy to do so.
And I love how I have seen you all model just looking right around you and saying, how can I be generous, not only with wealth, but with my time, with what I already know how to do, skills that you and Joanne already have, and you pour those into, like you say, very simply, we help them get a car. Well, if you've hung around with Dan very long, you know that one of his passions is not only finding a car, but you know how to find a good car. And so that's a skill that you have, a good car that's going to be reliable, what to look for. So you're using a skill and Joanne's love and skill for, how to take care of a home and how to do those types of things. So it's taking what you can be generous with. I just love how you guys model that out. And the car buying is fun too.
It is. I enjoy it. It's a rationale for me to scratch that passion that I have anyway, but with a worthy end result. But when we speak about generosity, we immediately think about those who have nothing, those who are really poor and shy. But generosity goes across all economic levels as well. We live in a community, Teresa, you've been here to our house many times, and you know that we live in a community where people have clearly done pretty well. Mm-hmm. There are two ladies who right now are taking care of husbands who are pretty much invalids. Joanne invites them over on Thursday afternoons from 2 to 4 for tea. You would think that she gave them each $1 million because it's not money, but to give them a little reprieve from the hardship that they're experiencing, where they can just be ladies and share life together, is so invaluable. To hear them talk, they just can't put a measure of worth on what Joanne has done. And it's that simple. Just come over to my house for tea to give you a break from what you're doing.
Yeah. The generosity piece is so not about money in my heart and the way I said generosity. It is that welcoming into your home. I know you've shared with us, and it just happened as the hurricane came through Florida and you all returned home, like opening your home, and Joanne's gift is hospitality and loving on people and all of those things, but just opening your home. You live in a great neighborhood, but people still had damage and needed things and needed meals and so it has nothing to do with economic status when we really live out the principle of generosity and who is the one, that God is putting in front of you today.
That's right.
Where you can be generous even for a moment. Maybe it's a good conversation. You stopped them in the hallway and just spoke into their life. That's generosity to me. That is giving away.
After the hurricane, we had multimillionaires eating off of Joanne's salad buffet and taking showers in our showers. Yeah. Again,
it's generous, Dan. When you give your shower away, that's generosity. I'm just saying. It's a whole nother level when you let them be in your shower. So that's awesome. Well, let's look at another one of these. Like I said, you and I have talked. You could do whole podcast episodes around each one of these. Generosity is a big one. But there's another one on 307 that is talking about if you have an extraordinary gift, you can't expect to live an ordinary life. So one of my favorite passages of scripture is Romans 12:1-2. It's actually my life verse from the Message version, which is that take your everyday ordinary life, your eating, sleeping, walking around life, and place it as an offering before God. So taking the ordinary day and saying, what's the extraordinary piece that I can pour into it? But this quote, you and I both love Thomas Merton. And at the end of this little writing that you did about using your talents and those types of things, what you've been given that's extraordinary, there's the quote: vocation does not come from a voice out there calling me to be something I am not. It comes from a voice in here calling me to be the person I was born to be, to fulfill the original selfhood given me at birth by God. That's a Thomas Merton quote. What does that mean to you when you read through that quote and as you wrote this particular writing?
Absolutely. There's so many pressures in our current culture we have generational expectations. If a gentleman is a doctor, his son is likely to be encouraged to be a doctor. If a lady's a teacher, daughters are likely to be seen as the next generation of teachers. There's always that. We all have that. And then there's societal expectations out there. Wow, you have to have a college degree to do anything worthwhile. And yet we see exceptions to those all around us. And it takes a lot of courage to take a fresh look at who am I individually. This is not meant to be selfish or greedy or anything like that, but it's to be authentic. And that's what Thomas Merton is talking about, to be authentic. Who is that original person that God intended for me to be? Now, that takes a little introspection. You may need to do the Enneagram to get a fresh look at what that means, get the advice and opinion of other people around you. But that frees people up. I've made a very nice living as a career coach, seeing people who are 45 years old who realize I'm living out somebody else's dream, not my own. I may have a professional degree. I've got the JD or MD or DDS behind my name, but this isn't me. This doesn't fit me. And it's sad when that occurs. Now, fortunately, it's easier than ever to make those redirections at this point, but it means to really look inward. When in 48 Days to the Work You Love, I talk about my belief that 85% of the process of having confidence, proper direction in our career and life comes from looking inward first. 15% is the application, but we tend to look around us for external solutions. Wow, here's a business opportunity that's really hot. Here's a career, computer programming that's really hot. I guess I'll do that. And those external solutions can lead to burnout and frustration. So looking inward is the first way to really live an authentic life.
Yeah. And it is hard to do. It's hard to do that in those younger years. Younger and younger now, we're talking to kids about in our school systems about like choosing their career path, doing their things.
Right.
And yet I see like your grandchildren and things like Ashley, letting them explore so many different things and lean in, and you and Joanne encourage that. And yet we're forcing this mindset sometimes, right, of choose your career path and go that direction. I often talk about, and you and I both have some history behind us and some years on us to say, I've done a lot of different things. Each one of those has taught me something that I've carried forward. I'm not ashamed of the different career paths I've chosen and the different things. But the search, really, the hidden search was for my being. Who was I? And once that kind of settled in, then so many things came forth that I'm like, this is who I am, and this is who I'm to be in the world. So, this is a great little writing around that experience and that thing.
We get more clarity on that with life experience. Fortunately, life is a great teacher. So by the time you're 45, you have a lot of information. You can look back and see what are those common points, the recurring themes of things that I really was drawn to, things where I felt like I was in my zone. So you remove some of the exterior expectations. In this chapter that you reference here, I reference talking to a lady who came from another culture. And there's one thing that I heard from her that has always really stuck with me: the parental pressure to come to America to get a degree. And the real feeling was either you're a dentist, a doctor, or a disappointment. That's what she said. And it just broke my heart. Wow, how few people would those things fit? And yet the expectation was you do that, you ignore anything you know about yourself, you do that, so you guarantee your success. Well, we know that that kind of superimposed artificial outside success doesn't last. Ultimately, you've got to become more real about who you are. And if we can start that a little earlier, it tends to work out better.
And that really tied to some of your own story, correct? I mean, of just the expectation to live into a culture or be a thing, and how you had to come to that on your own too, of your own vocation and those
Absolutely. The
expectations. Yeah.
expectation was very clear in my family. I was going to go to school till I was 16, which the state required, and then stop and help my dad on the farm. That was it. Zero. End of story. There was no discussion about what I enjoy, what I was gifted in, what I felt called to do. It was, this is what's responsible and practical. My dad was a very godly man, but he still had that very limited view of what we're put on earth to do. Just do what's responsible. Forget this garbage about what you might enjoy or what you think would even benefit other people. Do what's responsible, and you're going to be okay.
Yeah. It was so fun to just a few weeks ago when you were here for my book launch event to have you come out to our farm and be back on the farm. And, I think people were surprised that knew you, and, you put off the ear of corn and you knew all about it. And you were talking about things, and they got to see a whole nother side of Dan Miller that they didn't know existed from your childhood. So that was a
And
fun
I love
experience.
that. I love that heritage. I love having grown up that way. Growing up on the farm gave me a little bit of experience in, horticulture, plumbing, electrical, mechanical, carpentry. I love that background, but I don't want to be forced to just live my entire life repeating what my dad did.
Yeah. Such good learning. Well, let's look at one more, because this one is one that's always stood out to me, and part of my own story is the one that's on page 255, which you can be wise without a PhD. So part of my story that I used to tell myself, that, false belief, was because I do not have a college degree. I'm one semester short from my bachelor's because of choosing to get married and different things. And back in, 40 years ago, you didn't have virtual classes that you could attend and all of that. And at one point in my life, I made the decision, actually in 2015, 16, right before we met, that I was going to invest in the training to become a better coach rather than finish that last semester online. I still may go back and do it. I'm not going to say never. But so this idea of, can I be wise? Can I be a person that feels like I have, something to bring into the world with wisdom, just resonates with me. And just this theme that you have about, if I would be with wise people. I remember the conversation I had with you at Social Media Marketing World when we were talking about me joining the mastermind. And I shared a story with you of, I had had a community as a pastor. I had been in a church community, and I knew the one piece of wisdom I knew for my life was I needed to surround myself with people who were doing what I needed to do, living the kind of life that I already had discovered I wanted to live. And I saw that in you and your community. And so this walk with the wise and you will become wise piece has really played out in my story as I've lived with your community. So just say more about this wisdom piece.
Well, for one thing, I didn't know you didn't have a college degree.
No.
Maybe I need to reassess you being part of my mastermind.
I have a 2-year, and it's funny, in computer programming, because you know what?
Really?
That was the thing, right? Back in
Oh,
1979,
that's
if you knew
funny.
how to do computer programming, and I love it, and I still love computers. I'm a techie nerd at heart. I love all of that stuff, and it served me well. But that was when a computer was as big as this building that I'm in, right?
Well, my not knowing that certainly speaks to how much importance I put on that. And when we identify again the characteristic of wisdom being an understanding heart, I look for people who have that, who are living that out, who really are sensitive to other people. It has very little to do with academic background or IQ, may have more to do with EQ, but just an understanding heart. mean, that's what I look for. And that's what I want to have as well. I completed my doctoral work, as you probably know. I completed my doctoral work, all the studies and classes, and then elected not to do a dissertation, using that time rather than writing a formal document that only 4 old guys would ever read. I wrote a book that I would hope would help a couple million people and maybe make me a little money in the process, that being 48 Days to the Work You Love. So I took a turn right at the end there that most people thought was ridiculous, and I've never regretted that at all. But this idea about, about having wisdom, it just, once you really identify the meaning of wisdom, it's easy and easier to recognize that in people around you, people that you meet. If somebody is arrogant and self-important and puffed up, they're the speaker that blows on the stage 5 seconds before they speak and blows out the door 5 seconds afterward. Probably not what we would consider having an understanding heart. If, well, there's some other examples that come to mind. I don't want to step on any toes, but it's not a matter of being able to be a superstar on Who Wants to Be a Millionaire or Jeopardy. Sometimes I grieve for people who have just filled their head with just facts and figures, things that you can memorize or things that you can easily find today on your phone in a split second. Let's fill our hearts and minds with other things that have more value than just facts and figures and memorization. I mean, understanding this puts in question the history of our academic system, our educational system. We're seeing it break down. People with expensive, high-level degrees who haven't developed an understanding heart, who haven't developed the skills of being around other people, of helping and understanding, and they struggle, and then they wonder why. But it's so
Well,
simple. I mean, this is something you could teach a 6-year-old and give them a head start on life.
and coming into a season of life, which is, where you are now, where I'm coming into of, am I giving knowledge and information, which we can give, or am I coming with a heart of wisdom
Mhm.
and coming even more as a listener, and then being wise in what I give out and what I share. And I love how you model that. There's so much you could teach on, there's so much you could do in business building and all kinds of things, but yet you and Joanne both, as people in this season of life saying, what's the wisdom? Ronald Rolheiser, one of my favorite authors, talks about giving your life away, and then even to the point of, in some seasons of life, depending how long you're on this earth, giving your death away. Like, what does it look like to live into the season of life that you're in with wisdom? So going back to,
Mm.
you with your son, looking at that character, in the Bible and saying, what did he really ask for in the understanding heart and that season of life? So I wonder, even as you live in this season, Dan, you've moved recently, what's it been, 2 or 3 years now? You've been in Florida. You've
Yes.
made some life changes. You went through that transition. Um, and you're in a different season of life and living differently. But what is it now that you feel like is still your calling, your place to bring into the world, through books like this, this wonderful, beautiful writings of wisdom? What are you looking forward to? What's next?
That's a great question, and one that I address every day. What is next? I've had some things that have worked really well. I have some things in place now that continue to work really well, but I'm not looking for mediocrity. I'm not looking for sameness. I'm looking for, okay, what is it that I need to be a steward of? You know that word well.
Mm-hmm.
What is it that I need to be a steward of? If God has given me some restlessness in my heart still, what does that mean? What is it going to look like? Now, doing what I did here, doing an understanding heart, putting that together, defies everything that publishers say you should do. It should be cheaper, digitally, delivered. Who's not in a custom box that doesn't adapt well to bookshelves. I mean, all those things say no. But it was something I was so clear about in what I wanted it to be. So it defies a lot of business sense, but it's something that's a really passion project for me. At some level, in moving forward, I look for those things. even defining what is God's will for this next season of my life, it's what do I have a sense of peace about? And what do I not have a sense of peace about?
Mm.
Often that's the definer. In as much as we'd like to be a linear equation for this is what to do next, I don't look at life that way at this season of my life. So I'm going to be doing things that are probably unusual, that are not highly in line with adapted business practices, but just trusting the process, these things that come from my heart at this season, there's some reason for it. I'm getting a lot of affirmation. We're just in the early beginning days here of having this book out, notes from people, orders like from you, where you're going to give it as gifts to people. I mean, that really means a lot to me to see that it's valued enough as a book to be given as a gift to somebody that you care about as well. So I'm not real sure. I mean, I'm excited about the not knowing. I love the mystery, even as part of my faith walk. I don't want everything to be reduced to things that I just understand. Faith, by definition, means we don't really know what's ahead, but we just keep walking that next step. I love that process, that journey. So I think the next 10 years, now I'm planning out the next 25 years, things that I want to accomplish, but I know in that there are going to be a lot of things that I can't really see clearly at this point. Again, the walk of faith, and I'm excited just to keep going day by day.
Well, I'm excited to watch that journey because part of what you give away right now, at least to me personally and to those that know you, is watching you live out the season of life and not just saying, hey, I'm going to retire. You live in a beautiful retirement community, right? Has some great, recreational things you could do and all of that. And yet that's not even why you're there. But that's what a lot of people think the next season of life is about. And so for someone like me that I don't see retirement looking a certain way and just seeing what is next and you living into those passion projects like this book is going to be super exciting to watch because you're in a season of life to live those things out and model that now for those of us who aren't far behind to say, what can that look like, right? What can that look like for me to still live a rich, full life and yet being enjoying things and living in warm seasons and doing all those things. So thank you for even modeling now what that looks like, because I think that's a beautiful space. Thanks for being on today, Dan. We could talk about every one of these. And I know you've got some new things that you're considering putting out there around this type of content. You've been talking about it on your podcast. We're not long before Christmas here, right before Thanksgiving. Great gift idea. I'm going to be giving this to several people in my life as a gift because it's not just a gift book, a coffee table book, right? But it is a gift book of wisdom and knowledge and those Sabbath musings that he used to write. So thank you so much, friend. It's been great to have the conversation.
Oh, thank you. I love any conversation with you, but I love your support of this particular book. And I really do hope that it brings encouragement and inspiration to people who do read it.
Thank you all for listening. I end every podcast with, every ordinary day has an extraordinary moment. This has been one for me today. I was really looking forward to this conversation. So have a great week, everyone. And we'll be with you next week on the Real Life Process podcast.